was sign languages as endangered languages. Now, why are sign languages endangered? We all know about sign languages, and I want to mention here that nowadays, because of the attitude of the hearing community towards signing or the sign language, and because of the development of science and technology, and maybe the fear of the hearing parents about signing. These factors have led to sign language becoming endangered. Now, this is why I have chosen this topic for my PhD. I felt that sign language, somewhere we are ignoring the fact that sign language is the first language of deaf children, and they have every right to use it for their further the communication and the learning of literacy. Now, what is hearing impairment? I would start by telling you what is hearing impairment. We know generally it is the audiological condition of not hearing, but then there are different levels. The categorization of hearing impairment is provided in tabular form by Ali Jung National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities. And here you can find the different levels of hearing impairment. So, depending on the degree of impairment, the people can be categorized from mild to totally deaf. So here you can see that the people who are mildly deaf, they have 80 to 100% of speech recognition ability in their battery, and the hearing disability is comparatively much lesser than those who are profoundly or totally deaf. So here you can see the level of speech recognition in the people who are mildly, moderately, severely, profoundly or totally deaf, and then the hearing disability in these people. Now, my research involved children who are profound to totally deaf. So they have around 70 to 100% of hearing disability, and the speech recognition, the recognition of speech sounds is very much lesser than the mildly hearing impaired people. So the children with profound deafness, we can say they are not deficient in speech, but they lag behind in speech and language in the absence of sufficient exposure to language in their early years. Why am I saying this thing? They are not deficient in speech. They can speak quite well, but then they are deficient in speech because they do not have enough exposure to the speech sounds. And then the language part, because these children, most of the deaf children are born to hearing parents, and the hearing parents, especially I'm talking about India, the case might not be that grimmer in other parts of the world. The parents, the hearing parents, they are afraid of sending their children to special schools, to the schools meant for the deaf children, because they feel that if they would go to the special school, probably they would start signing, and because they are themselves deficient in sign languages, they do not know sign language, probably they make use of some of the home signs to make the communication comparatively better. That is why they just want their child to be good at speech, or at least good at writing, literacy, but not signing. So what is sign language? Now, we all know about sign language. I'm sure everybody must have heard about sign language, or seen somebody signing around them. So sign language, there are so many misconceptions and myths revolving around sign language. First of all, sign language is a full-fledged language. So it has a distinct set of complexities at phonological, morphological, and syntactic levels. So whatever is needed for a language to be a language, sign language has everything. And then it is not a distorted or gestural form of any spoken language. Now, this is a very important fact, that we generally feel that sign languages are just a gestural form and anybody can just sign, and we can understand what other people are saying through signing, or we can just normally make conversation with the deaf people. Sign language is not a distorted or any gestural form of any spoken language. In fact, it has a proper structure which has to be followed while learning sign language. And then there are over 400 sign languages, so we cannot say that all the sign languages are same or identical. At some level, they may be identical because hand shapes, the movement, the location, which are the basic elements or the components of sign language, they are altogether same. But then the combination of hand shapes, movement, and location, which makes one sign, that is different in different languages. And then sign languages are also different from each other at conceptual level. So language teaching, as I have already mentioned, sign language is the first language of the deaf, and the second language can be literacy, reading or writing in any dominant spoken languages of the community in which the child is born and brought up. So literacy of spoken languages. Why? Because sign languages do not have script. So when we want to teach our children, our deaf children, literacy, this is a fact that sign languages do not have a script, and this could be one of the factors which is contributing to the endangerment of the sign languages. Although there are some notation systems which were developed at some point in 18th, 19th century, but then these systems are no longer in use. Some of the notation systems are Babian's mammography, Stokes, chirology, but these are some of these systems are no longer in use. And if I say about present time, yes, there are some nations which recognize sign languages as scheduled languages, and they are working in this direction. But as per my knowledge, I have not come across any sign language having any script. Okay, so signed English or sign system. So there is a new term, sign system. Sign system is different from sign language. Now, when we develop some gestures on the basis of based on the structure of a spoken language, that is known a signed system. For example, any sign language, it has its own structure, it has its own signs. So if we want to compare Indian Sign Language with English language, Indian Sign Language do not have sign for each and every word of English language or Hindi language or any spoken language. So there are some of the gestures or signs developed by the teachers or the facilitators while teaching literacy, so that there can be, they can establish a relation between the spoken language and the sign language. I will make it more clear to you in the next slide. So what is signed system, or it based on any spoken language, it can be called signed English, signed Punjabi, signed Hindi, signed Bengali. So the system based on any spoken language, that is signed system. Okay, so it is different from sign languages, and use of gestures corresponding with each word of the spoken language is established, and then these gestures are not signs of sign language. While teaching spoken language or literacy of spoken language, we need to develop gestures or signs of those words which do not have any sign in the sign language. So they are randomly developed by the facilitator to teach each part of the sentence and the correct word order. Word order in sign language is more flexible. For example, if you say, I'm going for shopping, you may sign as I go shopping. You can also sign as go shopping I. So the sentence structure, the word order in sign languages is relatively flexible. There is no use of helping verbs or gerunds in sign language. And the tense or time is represented through an additional sign. So for example, if you're talking about the past or something which has happened in past, First, you have to complete the sentence and then you will use a sign for past or future. So talking about the phonology of sign language, we have hand shapes, we have location, we have movement, and then we have facial expressions. Hand shape is any shape of the hand, and then location is at what location our hand shape is situated. And then the movement. For example, am I visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So for past, we use this sign, this sign. So this is the hand shape. This is the location from here to here. So this is the location and this is the movement. So location can be somewhere parallel to your shoulder and the movement is front to back. Whereas when we want to say future, it is like this. So the hand shape would be a little different because here the palm would be that side, and when we talk about future, the palm would be this side. And when we talk about location, the location is almost same at the beginning. It is parallel to your shoulder, but then the movement is completely opposite. For past, the movement is from front to back, but for future, the movement is from back to front. And then the facial expression. I will tell you an example. So here, for example, in sign language, if you want to say what is your name, in sign language, you would sign as your, okay, so here it is, the wrist, your name, what? And the facial expression is very important because it acts as the punctuation. So your name, what? But in signed English, because we need to teach our students literacy, the reading and writing part, so we have to tell them what is the significance of is and what should be the right word order in in English language or any spoken language. So here the right word order would be what is your name, but since we do not have is, the is verb, in sign language, we have to develop a different gesture or a sign for it. So for teaching deaf children English word order, we had to develop a gesture for is. Now the sign would be what is your name? And the question mark, we need to tell them that the significance of the question mark, the importance of punctuation, and then we need to tell them what is the use of is. And then the next time when they come across different verbs, auxiliary verbs, or the action verbs, then we can teach them why we are not using is, am, are, or why we are using action verbs. And this is how we started teaching them English with the help of sign language, which is their first language, and signed English, which is developed by the teachers. Now, what is interactive writing approach? This is very important. We need to have an approach which can enable the teaching of literacy through their first language, teaching of literacy to deaf children through their first language. So interactive writing approach was coined in 1991 by the faculty of the Ohio State University, but for the hearing children. And since 2007, interactive writing approach is being used with the deaf children for teaching them literacy. Now, what are the key features of interactive writing, and how did we use interactive writing for teaching them literacy with the use of their first language? Now, first thing is grouping. There can be a whole class or a small group, but then we divided the deaf children into smaller groups because their attention time is very less, and they get bored very easily. So we made sure that there should be smaller groups, and we should do the grouping. Grouping was the most important thing. And then writing for authentic purpose. We need to get them generate new ideas, but since their background knowledge is very less, They do not meet with so many people, and the happenings around them are not as much as we have. So their background knowledge is lesser than most of the children who are staying in at their homes, since these children, most of the deaf children stay at residential schools, so they do not have that much of experience on different things. So we made sure that whatever we are asking them to write on, they should be able to generate more and more ideas. So they should be writing something for authentic purpose. And then sharing the writing task. One task was shared between the teacher and the deaf learners, and then the learners were invited to the board based on their strengths and weakness. The teacher was asked to choose one of the students, learners, and then they were made to write on board. And this is how the teacher and the students shared the task. Supporting the process through conversation, this is very important. The teacher, in fact, I as an observer, we all try to generate more and more ideas. I used to say something which I could share with them, and then I always wanted to always encourage them to speak more about certain things. Then they used to generate more and more ideas, and this is how we could just write more and more. And then creating a common text. This is what I have already shared with you. The teacher and the students, they used to write a common text. They shared the text, and then that text was read by all, and then they were made available for all to read. And after, so creation of readable text, this was the main thing. So whatever these children were writing, they were made to understand that what they say or sign, that can be written down, and whatever they can write can be read. So this is how we try to promote reading and writing. As the learners gain more control, less rereading during the writing practice will be required. So reading again and again, that was the main point. That was the main thing we were quite concerned. So we made them to read the text which we all created. So these are some of the studies which have already been done. Since 2009, interactive writing approach is being used with deaf children. So these are some of the studies. Giddens in 2009, she studied the literacy levels of children with the use of interactive writing approach. And there were 3 deaf students, and it was a 6-week study. Then in 2011 by Williams, in 2014 by Dostal and Wolbers, and in 2020, since I have just submitted my thesis in 2019, so my study was based on, was a 10-week study, and there were 50 participants, and the deaf learners were at secondary level. The significant gains were found in micro levels, handwriting, spelling, punctuation, and macro levels, coherence, cohesion, and grammar also. But in syntax part, not much progress could be found, especially in the number of complex and compound sentences. They could generate simple sentences, but the number of complex and compound sentences did not show any significant gains. So this was my study, and the conclusion, I would say, this was a foundational study, and I'm quite hopeful that much of work can be done in this field, and probably my study would encourage other researchers to do something more in this field. But I can say that English literacy can be successfully taught through sign language in an interactive environment. Thank you very much. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bajarh. Are there any questions from the audience to our speaker? Uh,
Okay,
yes, I think there is this question from Hakim.
Hakim.
Can we please give Hakim the word so that they can ask their question?
Okay, should I answer?
I don't know if the person would like to read out their question or whether you can just answer. I don't know. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so Hakim is asking how the sign language become endangered and how we can revitalize them. Okay, so Hakim, the first thing is our attitude towards sign language. Most of the, as I have already mentioned, most of the deaf children are born to hearing parents. So first of all, they are afraid of sending them to special schools and getting them involved in signing, and then sign languages are not documented. And another thing is the development in the field of science and technology. Now you might have heard about different hearing aids and implants. So again, you know, there are a number of things which are actually I don't know what should I say. I mean, these are the things which are contributing to the endangerment of the sign languages. I want to mention here that most of the old languages were spread through the transmission in the deaf children, the transmission of sign language in the deaf by the deaf children. In America, most of the schools had deaf children, and then these deaf children, when they went out of the school and when they traveled to different parts of the world, these languages spread. And that is why American Sign Language is the most popular language, sign language in the world. And then there are so many other languages also, but then we need to make our hearing as well as deaf children learn sign language. It's not only deaf children, but we as hearing people also, we should also try to learn not the sign language, proper sign language, but maybe we can just make a little effort from our side.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Yeah, so there's a question by Christina Ringo and a comment by Peter Austin.
Okay, so Christina asks, is your talk about all sign languages or does it focus on those of a particular region? Okay, so my work, I actually did my work in Punjab, which is a state in India, but I'm talking about all sign languages because there are just a few sign languages like British Sign Language, American Sign Language, then Auslan, which is Australian Sign Language. Except these languages, I do not find many languages, in fact the German sign language also. I mean, these are just a few sign languages which are very popular and which are freely used by hearing as well as the deaf population. But if I talk about Indian Sign Language, I want to mention here that in our Constitution of India there are 22 languages which are scheduled and which are recognized, but Indian Sign Language is not yet recognized. So it is not the same case everywhere. So I just hope maybe the people who are working in this field like me, probably we can hope for this to become a recognized language in India, maybe someday.
May I add something too?
Yes, of course, please do.
It's more of a comment really than a question. We talked about many of the bigger, so to speak, sign languages now, but I think in this context of endangered languages, it's also very important to talk about these so-called village sign languages, and these sometimes have even less speakers, so just maybe in one village, and they have some very interesting properties, and also their social linguistics, which I probably shouldn't go into here, but just so they have been mentioned as well.
Yes, yes.
Several comments by Peter Austin appear in the chat. I don't know if
Peter Austin has shared about Yuri. Yes. Yeah, she has done a lot on, in 1990s, she has worked on Pakistani Indo Sign Language. So yes, I have read a lot of work by her. Thank you, Peter Austin.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the audience? In that case, let's thank our speaker, Dr. Bajarh. Thank you very much for your talk. And now I understand that we are breaking up for lunch. Is that right? Let me hand over to Rita for announcement.
Yes, so that's correct. I just have a little announcement that two like one change. There are no cancellations later today to my knowledge, and we're in touch with the chairs, so that should all be fine. And one of the chairs in fact is here, so that's good. But I'll show you a little addition to the program before we have our break. One moment. So you should see that at 5 o'clock, after the third and final keynote, we'll hear from FEL. And then there are typos. These I mentioned last night and also this morning, that the panel, the time of the panel is correct in the program, but in the talks this is the wrong time. So I've been in touch with Tihomir and Iris, so they obviously know, but I'd also like you to know. So we'll finish actually a little bit earlier than it says in the program. So this is what I have to say for now, and I'll let you know if there are any cancellations. As previously, so we'll close this room, and if you want to carry on chatting or test your slides and so on, and then do go to the break room. Sonia should be there if I'm not mistaken. So thanks for a wonderful morning, very inspiring, and we'll see each other again at 1 o'clock UK time. Thanks.